The world is changing faster than ever before. In technology, mobility, media, entertainment, and sport, disruption is creating new movements, new communities, and new opportunities.
Now is the time for smarter choices. On our city streets, people are demanding new ways to travel, and millions are choosing micromobility as a cheaper, more environmental friendly alternative to the car.
We want to be part of this new mobility movement. At eSC, we are racing the fastest, most advanced e-scooters you've ever seen.
In some of the most iconic city locations in the world, we're bringing accessible, sustainable, thrilling racing to the heart of the cities.
For everyone, we are building a new micromobility sport free of the baggage of the past.
It's time to react.
It's time to change.
It is time to escape.
Welcome everybody. Welcome to this exciting interview that I have today. We have e-scooter Hrag Sarkissian. Please apologize the way how I pronounce your name.
Not at all. Thanks, Juan.
Yes, we expect today to have your intervention because I'm excited with the participation that you have been and your activities in this awareness about sustainability. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining the virtual summit. And today, you know, it's quite interesting to understand how the ecosystem is growing. You know, DHL is being part of the zero emission 2050. We know that 2050 is still a long way off. You know, what will be the future like? How will the technologies going to be implemented? How we're going to work? You know, so if we don't want to overwhelm the planet, of course, we need to do something today. We need to change the way how we do things. And one of the decisions that we take now, it's how we're going to determine how the future of the planet is going to be. And I heard in the video, as I was watching you, when you're watching it, you were saying something very interesting that caught my attention. So first of all, before I start any questions, tell us about you. What can you tell me about e-scooter?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, very happy to be here, and really thanks for having me. Just from an initial note, I think we're very much aligned here, and it's really kind of one of the mission behind what we're doing with eSC. So a little bit of background, a little bit of history. Most of our team and my co-founders come from a motorsport background, so we all understand the role of racing and how it's really improved and accelerated the development of safety and technology and mobility. I myself have been in racing, but not as long as these guys. But I've also been a very active tech investor. So I've done quite a lot, with my family on the venture capital, but really focusing on new technology, sustainability, and mobility is really a space that I have a lot of affinity towards. So essentially, when we look at the micromobility sector, we can see that it's a space that has grown very rapidly, over the last few years. It's because it's a requirement. So cities really need that. Cities, they need a new transportation mode as part of the whole urban ecosystem to help reduce pollution and congestion. So taking action really starts now, as you said, and micromobility really is one of those movements that are happening. So the space has been growing, much faster than we anticipated. It's been a couple of years. We started to see the birds and the limes come into place, but now the ecosystem has grown, much quicker, especially with COVID, right? Because COVID just made it so much more relevant and urgent because we were talking about micromobility or e-scooters to be part of the transportation ecosystem, but now it's also an alternative to public transport, right? So
you're saying something that caught my attention, Hrag, because today is normal, and you can take your scooter and go to the office if you're living close by. But this was not the way we were doing and living 2 years ago. So how the idea came up, guys? How the idea came up?
Yeah, I mean, look, it happened. Let's say it happened a couple of years ago, right? And I think we see where Bird basically overnight threw a bunch of electric scooters on the streets of Santa Monica, and it just happened, right? And the big, we've seen an evolution in transportation in the sense that we went from the ride sharing technology to the let's say to the docked sharing, right? So like the city bikes, the Barclays bikes, or the Believe in France, which are our docked concept. But what really changed is when we started to see the dockless system, where you could just basically, transportation on demand. You could essentially grab an electric scooter wherever you're from and use it to move around. So, the change has been very quick. The change has been very rapid. And so what happens, the main problem with this is that because it's been so quick, we've seen very fragmented implementations, across different geographies. So basically, we haven't seen, let's say, consolidation of best practices. In some cities, scooters can't ride on the sidewalks, but they want them to, they're forced to ride on the roads, which is quite dangerous. Or in other places, they'll say that, riders need driver's license, which is also kind of crazy. And so, there are quite a few pain points. And, another thing that people complain about, let's say, is about scooter clutter, right? In that they're all over the sidewalks and inconvenient because of this whole dockless shift. But all these points are a result of this fragmented implementation. We look at Berlin, on the other hand. Berlin is a city that has done a really good job integrating micromobility. They've built the infrastructure. So essentially, we need, for us, is how can we help champion this movement? How can we be at the forefront of this? How can we use racing, or let's say, how can we create a platform that brings all the different stakeholders around the table to accelerate the development in safety and technology and safe implementation of micromobility? And the answer is simple: racing. Racing has been a proven incubator for transportation and mobility.
Well, racing is in the heart of everybody. I mean, you can see everything started from, and one of the things that I call my attention from you guys, it's how you move it from vehicles, electric vehicles, formerly IE, to micromobility. So you are like the transition guys who are moving the people to make it more accessible, not only to watch, but make it,
Exactly.
exciting. And so could you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm picking up on your words when you're saying the championships. We see a lot of championships, and you were saying about awareness. You need to create awareness, and that's what you're doing with so many championships. But what is the ultimate goal beyond that? I mean, how do e-scooters support this goal to create awareness?
Absolutely. So there's a word that you used earlier, or two words that I'm gonna piggyback on. You said relevance and you said accessibility, right? So relevance is really important because today micromobility has become relevant not only to people living in the cities, but really to the younger generation. Today you look at 4 or 5-year-old children, they're all riding not electric scooters. They're riding the the 3-wheel push scooters. So the scooter has really started to infiltrate in various forms at a younger age. So this is really important, and this is something that we want to touch and amplify on. And then the second point really is accessibility. So for a sport or for a racing or a championship to be able to spread awareness, or to spread to influence, it needs to be accessible. People need to relate to it. It needs to be close to the people, and this is really what eSC is all about. And so accessibility, is on various fronts. It's on the way you get to the events, the type of the events, but also how you get to race in it. And we can talk about each of these elements, as we continue our conversation.
Cool. You mentioned something about the accessibility and how people get into these competitions. I'm going to give you an example. In Miami, from one day to another, we were flooded from scooters everywhere, in every corner. I was like, what is this? How do you use it? And then it's like, is there an app? How do you rent it? Is there an insurance? How can you tell me a little bit more of technicalities about this? Because I mean, is it safe? The speed what is the max speed? Could you tell us a little bit more about it, about the technicalities?
Yeah. So I mean, let me first say that all the points that you touch right now, this is exactly why we launched the eSC. It's specifically to help people, to help the space really navigate through these different pain points. So for example, we talk about let's say how to use or how to ride electric scooters, right? This is part of the awareness campaign. It's because ultimately by racing, you're messaging, you're influencing. So for us, the heroes, the athletes that we create, they will become heroes who in turn can influence the younger generation. They can educate them around the safety, around how to ride safely, around the technology. And on the other hand, from a development perspective, really it's about accelerating the development in safety and technology. So whether it's looking at different types of vehicles or different safety measures or safety systems around an electric scooter, or even around the infrastructure for micromobility.
It's very interesting. Now you're saying this, I'm recalling Ford with a company that is Spin, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So everybody now is understanding the importance of and the relevance of this. And you mentioned something important, education. One thing is awareness. The second part is education. And there is a liaison in between, which is technologies, platform applications, activities, championships. So how do you, I mean, we were talking about 2 years ago. Now we're talking now. How do you see motorsports in 10 years, in 5, 10 years? What's your vision about it?
So I mean, I think it's a good question, right? So I mean, there's always a question, that people ask is, is the future of motorsport electric? And if we all believe that transportation and mobility will be electric, it's going to be the same thing for motorsport. We have to maintain this relevance. So motorsport on the long run, I do believe, and we all believe, that it's going to be electric. But more importantly, motorsport needs to be accessible. It needs to be inclusive. So that means that we need to be able to inspire. We need to be able to inspire, let's say, the younger generation, for them to aspire to become an eSC champion. We want basically every 4 or 5-year-old kid to, when they dream of becoming an eSC champion, because this is how you get to people. This is the power of sport, right? It's the emotional connector. It's the power to influence. It's the power to change. So accessibility, fairness, inclusiveness, these are all extremely important in our let's say, part of our mission.
I really like that. Accessibility, inclusivity, fairness, because it's not only about developed economies. It's
correct.
Countries in development as well. I mean, we're talking
Absolutely.
about Latin America, we're talking about Africa, Middle East, Asia, certain countries where you don't see that type of infrastructure that well developed, but you guys seems to say this is an opportunity. I mean, in my vision, in the view, in 10 years, accessibility is going to drive, is the fuel of the economy, because now you have in the base of the pyramid of the economy, many people using the services, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. No, right. I think this is exciting. I really congratulate the efforts that you're doing. Tell me more about the championship. Where do you think with COVID, how it's going to happen?
Yeah.
You guys are facing any issues, or how do you plan to do this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a really good question, and obviously, first of all, we actually launched in July last year, so we basically launched in the middle of the pandemic. So I think that was quite interesting, because it also allowed us to really see how the market would react. And when we first launched, it was something that we really pondered when was the right time, but we realized that COVID made this, really accelerated the conversation and brought the conversation forward. So we said, okay, let's launch now and let's see what people think, how people react. And we were very pleased to see that it was very well received. People understood what we were after, and they understood the need for it. So talking a little bit more about, let's say, our races and our schedule, I mean, there's no secret, right, that COVID is around. So this is something that we have to manage. And it's something that we've always considered from day one. So this is why 2021 really is our opening season, which we call season 0. Because we'd be aiming, would be ahead of ourselves if we said that we wanted to have a full-blown season and let's say, around the world. So that's really not feasible for 2021. And the other thing is, we don't want to launch a new sport without being able to have fans attend and be present and engage at the sport, because ultimately everything we're doing is about fan engagement, is about interaction between the fans and the riders and the community. So this is why we're starting with season 0. It's going to be 2 to 3 events by probably towards the end of the year, between Q3 and Q4, and then hopefully we should be announcing actually our first event quite soon. So we're quite excited about that. But for 2022, it's a completely different story. We're already working on a full-blown calendar with 8 to 10 rounds, really racing globally in Europe, in US, and eventually, LATAM and Asia very quickly as well. So I think I think we have a realistic roadmap. We have a clear roadmap, and so I think we're quite excited about that.
For sure, it's gonna keep your agenda quite busy, 21 and 22. So I wish you all the best, Hrag. Thank you very much for this interview, and hope to keep seeing you in 2022 as well in Racing News.
Absolutely. It'll be a pleasure. Thanks, Juan. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.